We are so excited to work with the T.D. Jakes Foundation under the chairmanship of Bishop T.D. Jakes and the leadership of their president and CEO, Sister Kelly Cornish. Please help me welcome for our afternoon fireside chat, Kelly Cornish from the T.D. Jakes Foundation.
Thank you so much.
Kelly, it is so good to have you with us today. I did a small introduction, but please tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Wow. So first, Pastor Watley, and to his amazing wife, Shauna, thank you so much for bringing me back. Dr. Darrell, it's good to prepare with you earlier this week. And just, gosh, it was just a few months we were here. And so I feel like we might be members now because it's been more than once. So out next to the Potter's house, So, but happy to be here. I don't even know where to start when people say, tell me a little bit about yourself. I will just say that my roots started in the church. I just started in the church. I was raised mainly by my grandparents, and I say that because I lived in New Jersey with my parents during my formative years, but would always come home in the summers to South Carolina and Georgia to my grandparents' house. And that was my true experience with revivals and going through the circuits and all that other good stuff and becoming a true pew baby and getting baptized. And so, but if I were to bring it full circle to today, literally I think I'm doing what I'm doing now, leading the T.D. Jakes Foundation, because my grandparents were both maternal and paternal grandparents were both very involved in the church, and that church was the community. So the community helped solve the problems. Anytime we had anything, I don't even remember a government, really, I don't. I remember us rallying around each other, rallying around family, rallying around community to help solve problems. And so that stayed with me, and throughout my, let's say, I think we need to go back to that, don't you think? Yeah. And so, when I decided, to go to college, I did majored in business and then went on and got a master's in human resource management. But all of my career has been focused on really trying to help level the playing field or getting people in underinvested communities into the mainstream. And so everything from starting off working with the U.S. Department of Commerce to going on and working in banking and then healthcare, and then ended my career in banking. I thought I had ended my career until I get a call from Bishop T.D. Jakes to ask me to come run his foundation. That's a whole different fireside chat. But here I am. I've been there two and a half years. Been here 2.5 years, and literally every role that I had, from Wall Street to healthcare, has led me to this role, to be able to now be on this side to help provide resources for those underinvested communities. And so that's a little bit about me.
Great. Now, for a lot of the people in the room, this is a time of uncertainty and transition. Mm-hmm. And you have navigated many sectors along your way, from what you just said, from healthcare to Wall Street, and now you're in the philanthropic sector with the Jakes Foundation. Can you talk a little bit about how you navigated those transitions and stayed true to who you believe yourself to be and what you were trying to do?
Yeah, that's like the secret sauce, right? Just trying to stay true to who you are, build a career, build a family, build a life against all odds, because literally the world makes you feel like you're against all odds. Being a woman, being a Black woman, a single parent, majority of my career, it was, those values. It goes back to being raised by really good people who, and I love to hear Bishop Jakes talk about this. He was like, I was poor, but I didn't know I was poor. Like I didn't, and that was me. Like, I guess in today's world, we would consider poor back then, but that just really held us accountable as kids, and really helped us to know that helping someone else is better than just you having it all. It was just those really the basic skills we learned as children have now really transferred into my adult life to help me sustain and become resilient, role after role. I've relocated 9 times in my career, so my kids feel like, they can pack a bag in a minute and roll. But that resiliency, that staying true to who you are and not compromising your integrity. There's so many times when you get pushed up against the wall, and then you're going to have to figure out, do I do this to keep this job, or do I do what I know is right? And that's really hard, and you have to have a strong relationship with your faith and with God, and having to discern. And I will tell you, every time I chose the side of right, I always won. I always won. So I would just say, just stay true to who you are, who you have grown to be. And as they say, you were built for this. You are. If you can just take one challenge after the next challenge after the next challenge. Then when the next one comes, you're just like, just bring it. You know what I mean? So they say when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, you're just like, all right, then what are we doing? So no, really, it's just thinking back to what I value, always going back to what I value, who I value, and my value systems that really helps keep me grounded. Mm-hmm.
Now, you did not set out to be the head of the T.D. Jakes Foundation. Mm-hmm. This is something that came along the way. Can you talk to us a little bit, because I believe that there will be some people in the room who have a myriad of experiences that can lead them to different places, but they're not sure what that looks like. So can you tell us a little bit about how tracking through the work that you've done, the experiences that you've had, the education that you've attained, prepared you for where you are now, even when you didn't see this coming?
Yeah, didn't see it coming at all. And I will just say, sometimes you think you're at the end and you've written your own plan, and God was like, no, that was just a prep work for what I need for you to do now. And literally 37 years, I thought, being in the workplace, and I literally, a year before I received this call, probably about 6 months, I had a conversation with my leader at the time at Wells Fargo, and I knew I was not going to get his role. And I was like, you know what? I've been down this road over and over and over and over again. I said, at the end of this year, I'm done. I'm done. I'm too young to retire, but I know I'm not going to keep doing this. That's why I said I'm not going to keep doing this. And I want to do it, but I want to do it in a different way. And literally, I had no plan. But I knew that God had not designed me to just keep taking hits and not getting promoted for it. You have to decide. And it sounds crazy now in the times that we're in, but again, that goes back to staying true to what you believe and understanding your value. And especially as women, it's hard to understand our value because we'll just keep going in and keep going in and keep going in. A man knows when to call it. He's like, look, you know what I mean? But we don't know when to call it. And so, my great boss, I just talked to him not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, and he was like, wow, I hate to hear this, but let's talk about what life looks like when you're finished. And, it's funny, I never had that conversation with him because I didn't know what God was going to do, but financially, I knew I had about 6 months that I could kind of sail a little bit. And so I had a whole plan that I was going to go sit on the beach and just kind of think about what I was going to do next in my life. You have to have a dream, right? And so that was mine. And so literally about 3 to 4 weeks ahead of my last day at the bank, I get a call from Bishop Jakes. But what's so interesting about that is I had met him about a year before, and some of you may know Pastor Michael Phillips. Pastor Michael Phillips used to pastor a church in Baltimore, but he had gone on to work for Bishop Jakes, and I got to meet him, and he was saying, no, we're looking to partner with a large organization to do some work in the community. And at the time I was working at Wells, and long story short, I spent my last year crafting the deal with Wells Fargo and Bishop T.D. Jakes. And so I thought that was my legacy. Like, you brought this man into this secular world, and they are signing a deal, and that's amazing. And the deal is truly it didn't go to him. It went to the foundation, which is a public 501c3, and then also part of the funding toward building homes with lower interest rates, just as a partner. So no one wrote a check for $1 billion to TD Jakes, even though the headline said that. That is not the case. It was literally to build the foundation that we're able to give money in partnership with Wells Fargo to organizations like you all and others. We've given out about 23 grants over the past 2 years, anywhere from $50,000 to $1.5 million. And it's been through the relationship with Wells Fargo. And so I really thought I was going right off into the sunset. That was going to be my legacy work. And then to get a call from him to say, well, now, we're in this. Can you help? And it's been a gift. And I say that because, back to your question, we have these lives, we have these careers, and we have a way that we think they're supposed to go. What the world tells you, or you go somewhere, you work for 30, 35 years, gone are the days you get the gold watch and a pension and all, that's gone. But, so the ones who have it, congratulations, you made it, you just made it. But the others out here, as they say out here in these streets, trying to figure it out. It's a whole thing. It is a whole thing. And so, so I didn't know, but as I look back, God was preparing me for his plan. And his plan now, he has me in position, and I know how to work with banks. I know how to work with funders. I know what they need to see around impact. So we partner with people like you all that have massive impact. And then we're able to just really push the work forward fast. And so to get the call, I called a couple of people before I said yes right away, and people were like, why are you calling me? Who does he call? So I ended up, in March, I was at Wells, and by April, May, sometime, I was in Dallas, and been there for the past 2.5 years.
That's a great place to pick up. Tell us.
Thank you.
You can please.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tell us about the work that the foundation does. You guys have a few pillars on which you build your work to create communities and sustainable ecosystems. Tell us a little bit about exactly what it is that the foundation sponsors, does, and the mission that it's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so, if you've ever, and Pastor Watley understands this, when I say, if you ever have to sit down and have a conversation with Bishop T.D. Jakes, it is this big conversation. It's just big. And so after he offered me the job, he was like, a couple of weeks before I started, he calls me. He's like, so what's your vision for the foundation? I'm like, what is my vision for your foundation? But you couldn't say, I don't have one. So I was but I didn't. I was waiting for someone to tell me what to do when I got there. But so I just said, I really, it's great after you learn how to pivot and move after you've been doing it for a while. But I was like, I really need to get in there and talk to you more and the team that's there to kind of find out what the work has been. But to me, it feels like it is really focusing on generations and generational wealth and the things that you talk about in your books and how to sustain. And so I'm really looking forward to bringing that vision to life. And he's like, okay, that sounds good to me. So very simplistic, but when I did get there, I really used a firm. We had to get a firm to really begin to crystallize this organization is the entity that he has stood up to live in perpetuity, which means when he's long gone, he wants the work of this foundation to continue. And so with that, we looked at the ministries that were in the church that he started 20 years ago and tried to figure out which ones would live best inside of the foundation. So we have a few. One is at STEM AI. He was doing STEAM camps in 2007 at the church. So he was like ahead of all of this, right? And so we have that inside of the foundation. We have a reentry program that has serviced over 42,000 people over the past 20 years inside of the foundation, and a few more. So with that, we took it with a firm here in Baltimore, UPD consulting firm. I don't know if you know them, but they were great, minority owned, wonderful. Referred to us by Wells Fargo, and we spent 6 to 9 months understanding what the vision could be. And any good leader, whether you own a business, whether you're leading your home or anything, you have to have a vision. And so after we talked to many stakeholders, we spent time with Chairman Jakes and his wife, First Lady Sarita, we found out that their vision was so huge, and it's really to create a world where every community thrives. That's the vision. An entire world. Anywhere you live in the world, you should be able to feel safe. You should feel like you're able to thrive. You should feel like there's opportunity. You should feel like there's access. And then with that, 3 areas. In order to do that, you need financial inclusion. You need to understand the money. You need to always be upskilled in how you work and where you work. Career readiness, workforce readiness, and educational access. Educational access might not be a college degree. It may be a certification, but understanding what's needed in the season for a person. And then the last pillar is community transformation and well-being. If the money is right, you have the job, you can transform your community. So those are the 3 things we stand on, and we partner with people that can pull that through in the various communities around the country. So that's who we are.
Great. In your time in doing this work, both at the foundation and what you did with Wells and before that, what have you learned about what it really takes to build wealth and access opportunity? Oftentimes, I believe that we have a pie in the sky view of building wealth, sort of almost a lottery mentality that it'll just happen. What do our people need to know about what it really takes to build wealth and then pass that on to generations to come?
And I feel like it's such a loaded question because wealth is defined differently for different populations.
Say more about that.
So, your health could be your wealth. Like if you are focused on breaking the generational issues around your health, that could be a form of a new wealth for your family. But we all talk about it in forms of money, and that's fine. I would say as you think about generational wealth, especially when you think about in the Black community, I was going to say Black and brown, but more specifically in the Black community, we're still, it's such a large percentage that's still just a paycheck away from losing everything, right? So we're still sort of here trying to build those fundamentals on people having a healthy relationship with money. And just think about what is a healthy relationship, any other relationship that you have with your partner or with a friend or whatever. You spend time, you get to know it, you study it, you spend time with it, you travel with it, you do this, you ask the questions, you fall back, you make mistakes, you get back up. And I think, though, it hasn't been really drilled in our heads as a community on what wealth building means. So it literally could be you getting your credit score from one level to the next. That's a form of building wealth, because then the money that you borrow will be cheaper, and you probably can borrow more. So you're taking a step. And let me tell you, I'm a witness to this because I got my first wealth advisor. A friend of mine referred her to me, and she's still my wealth advisor, when I was thinking about filing for bankruptcy. I had no money. And my friend was like, "You need a wealth advisor." I said, "What do you mean? I don't have any money. Like, I'm trying to figure life out. What is she gonna do?" Right? What's she advising? Right, absolutely. But her name is Christy. She's amazing. 22 years later, my portfolio is amazing. But she said, "Really, now is the time you need me to teach you how to crawl out of this hole And she really did. And literally, it's been a climb, literally just stabilizing your credit. Let's start there. Then I was in a home, taught me about refinancing the home to make the debt go down. And I had more money at the end of the month. It was just like the basic building blocks, right? And then when I finally started doing better and started getting bonuses, she's like, now we'll take this bonus and we'll do this. Then I started working for companies that had stock. Okay, you're gonna take your stock and you're gonna go do this. And then, but this is stuff I didn't know. My parents didn't teach me this, right? They didn't teach me this. And then as time went on, she's like, so what are you dreaming for? I said, I wanna have a rental property. She's like, okay. A couple of years later, boom, let's take this and do that. I was like, really? Can I do that? But I say that because it is a journey. It is not gonna just happen for you. And unfortunately, we go to work every day and they don't teach you how to build wealth. They teach you how to go to work and wait for every other Friday. That's what they teach you, right? So it is up to us to get in sessions like this and plan your estates. I also learned that there are so many people my age in their 50s and 60s that may have property that their parents owned, but the deed is not right. So just going and understanding the paperwork if you do have something that's owned by a family member. So, you know, as I think about, and this is a long answer, but I like to use myself as an example about building wealth. So now I'm finally at the stage of my life where I can start thinking about what do I want to leave for my children, my 2 boys, right? And then it's interesting, we say we want to leave this for the next generation, but you have to ask, are they ready to receive it? Are they ready to receive it? Because everything you work for overnight, they could go, oh, and they ready to take this trip around the world. Like, I always want to go around the world. You know, you thinking, you know what I mean? So I think it's getting smart about how you leave the generational wealth. It can be, and that's, again, having classes like this to understand, I do want my children, and it might not be your children, it might be your grandchildren. You know, and so understanding what to do with the little bit that I now have, if I wanted to live on in perpetuity, if I wanted to stay, what do I need to do now to make sure if they're not responsible, and they might not be responsible, and your kids might not be the one in the family that gets it because they're not responsible. And you know what? That's okay. It's a whole conversation happening now about transfer of wealth from the baby boomers because they're like, I don't know if these kids can handle all the stuff I work for. You know what I mean? And so, so generational wealth is an ongoing conversation. I worked on Wall Street. I work with some of the richest people on Wall Street that's making money off of our deposits every day. And I see that just their relationship and understanding of money. And and then when you get to that level, it's a whole different level of money that you could not dream, you could not like I'm learning every day, like, okay, really, right? So I would just say that continue to learn, and it's not a big thing. Like, you don't have to strive to get $1 million. Take what you're making every week or every month or that income tax that comes in or something and reinvest it into something that's going to grow for you. So wealth is defined, I'll end by saying wealth is defined differently for different people. So you just have to understand what works for you. I know when I leave this place, if I have, real estate, if I have a nice nest egg and I've put it inside of this trust and my kids understand it and they're getting a portion of it as they go, and I'm interested in buying a business, like all of that, if I can make some of those things happen, but make sure it stays and grows beyond me, that's success to me. So, but.
Amen.
It's a long answer.
Well, the Bible does tell us that a good man or a good woman leaves an inheritance for their children's children.
Mm-hmm.
So I heard you say something really interesting. In everything that you've talked about, I've heard you say that you had to put together a plan. It
Yes.
was, we did this, then we did this. We did this, and we did this. A lot of people can do the planning because you can get somebody to do that. Mm-hmm. My question for you is, I'm going to assume that there were times in all of this when you were, let's call it, less than encouraged and maybe even a little frightened. Mm-hmm. What advice can you give to people in times of uncertainty like we're in right now? We're in, mm-hmm. It feels strange to say we're in unprecedented times because it feels like every day they get more and more unprecedented. Yeah. What advice can you give to people for taking that first step, that first move that may seem like it takes a lot of courage and a lot of boldness to start moving their plan from paper into action?
So I think that we get overwhelmed, and I think a lot of our uncertainty is self-imposed. And I say that because we have absolute control over what we watch. We have this whole free will thing, what you watch, what you read, what you hear, and what you scroll, who you follow. You control all of that. You control all of that. So what goes in is going to come out. If you're bringing in stress, it's going to come back out. You know what I mean? So me personally, I can't tell you the last time I watched the news. I don't watch the news. People have to tell me, Pastor Wiley, thank you for updating me on some things today. Like, I have no idea. Like, people have to call me and say, like, you know that the world is burning down. You know that, right? You know, I literally, and I did that for my mental health. I was in a season where I had to make some major decisions in my personal life, and I said, I have to do this, but I don't have to listen to this, you know? And then on top of that, I read my Bible, and my Bible tells me something different. So when the Bible says, you know, God owns it all anyway, so what am I concerned about? You know what I mean? And I know that's easier said than done, but that's when people ask me, how are you making it from day to day, from level to level, keep going up? And I just take the thing that's in front of me, the thing that I have to deal with today. And I'll tell you this quick story. I remember way back when, it wasn't funny then, but it's a little hilarious now. But I remember when I thought my house was going to go into foreclosure. And I'm just sitting here I wasn't working. I hadn't worked for 2 years. I'd been on all these interviews. It was during 2008, 2009. It was just a wreck of an economy, like we are now, almost. But literally out of work for 2 years. I had 90 interviews. I applied for over 90 jobs, over 200 interviews, because you have to meet with more than one person. Just no after no after no after no. And my house had gone into foreclosure. And the same guy who brought my papers for foreclosure, he came and brought me paper for something else. I don't know what it was, the car or something. I don't know. I was like, you have a very risky job, sir. I was like, I was like, luckily I live in a good neighborhood, but so I don't know why I told that story, but anyway, but I remember when he brought the papers for the foreclosure, I was like, I put him down and I was doing whatever. And I remember calling a friend of mine that night. She's like, well, how do you feel? I was like, you know what? That wasn't on my list to worry about today. It was not. I had like 10 other things I had to worry about that day. And that was not on the list. So it made it like later on in the week. And so I say that because deal with what's right in front of you. I don't live in just uncertainty, because the stress will literally kill you. It will take you out. So deal with the thing that you can deal with today, and literally they say, turn it over to God. Just put it somewhere else. And literally what I would do, I would get papers like that and I would go stick it in my Bible. I'm like, I can't deal with this right now. It's not for me to deal with today, because I don't know what to do with it. I don't have an answer for that thing, but he did give me an answer for this thing. So let me work on this. And, it sounds, but it's not that deep. Like, I know you have to realize what's in your control to do on that day. He gives you your daily bread. You have to understand what's in your control on that day. And I would also say I surround myself with people, even people I work with, that speak life into me and believe in me. That's what I do, because it's so many negative, and I have some great friends, but when you pick up the phone on the other end of that, it's going to be all about them and a lot of negativity, and that's in this season. If you're going through that time, you just have to be very mindful of the people who speak into your life, how you surround yourself, and what you focus on. So, yeah.
Amen.
Thank you.
You talked a little bit about shifting definitions of wealth. I want to ask you a slightly different question that personalizes it a little bit more for people. What is a new way, especially in this day and age, with all that's going on and how really the world has changed, what's a new way for people to define success for themselves?
Again, one of those, it depends on who you're talking to on what day, right? And are you asking, you think about, are you asking the question like, at the end of my life, what do I want someone to say about me as far as being successful? And my executive coach actually had me write my eulogy, which if you haven't done it, I recommend you do that. Because it really grounds you, and it really grounds you. Like, you have to go take a minute afterwards. But and the way I would answer that is, and he basically said, what do you want people to say about you? And to me, that defined my success. I wanted to say, I want my children to talk about how I just made Christmas a thing. Like, that's the whole thing. And just literally how I did what I could to make their lives better. And that in the workplace, any place I touched was different and better when I left it. And so to me, those are my definitions of success. And in that, if I stay true to those things, the other things come. The wealth comes. And literally the financial wealth comes, the health and its wealth comes, because I'm not as stressed, because I'm focused on the things that I know that were assigned to my life to do. And so a lot of people look at other people and try to make comparisons, and that will throw you off of your wealth game, of your health game. But you've been called to do a thing, and if you do it well, the wealth will come. And so success is however you define it. For some people, success on any given day is just getting up out the bed. And days like this, it's just getting up out of the bed. For others, it's making sure that whole checklist of 18 meetings is done, And for others, it's, wanting to become a millionaire, or, in these days, a billionaire. But I would just say, more money, more problems. I will say that. So it's a whole thing. The grass is really not greener on the other side, but it helps. The money does help. But so it all depends on your definition of success. And now the workforce has changed so much. It used to be you go to work and you work for 30, 40 years, and you retire, and you go play golf, and you go on trip, but that's been blown up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so then you have to figure out, what does work mean? And then what does success in your vocation mean? Because now we're turned to pivot. We have to do this, we have to do that. And, you have that job, but from success to wealth, you can have that job, but you also need different streams of income. You need to understand, different ways of building around wealth. And so it's a very different time. And so the economic reality, like you all nailed it with this conference, is people just need to understand that the world has changed, will continue to change, and the world as you once knew it will never be. The world that your parents had and your grandparents had, and you just go do this and you go do that job and it's gone. It is just gone. And I'm so mindful of my kids Like, I don't want to put them in a reality that was my reality, because it's not their reality. It is not their reality. For them to stay on a job 3 years, they need to get to go watch at 3. Like, you just dropped to 0. You know what I mean? You know, and they can find one on Amazon. It don't have to be the Rolex. It could just be, but like, you did that, and then go on to the next. But it's so different. But at the same time, the companies aren't loyal. It's not the employees aren't, but the companies aren't either. And you have to understand, we live in a capitalistic society, and it's about the green. It is about the money. So our kids, I'm trying to follow their lead. I'm trying not to, I want them to buy homes and do this and do that. And they're looking at me like, Mom, this is not the way you grew up. Like, this isn't anymore. So success is just different. And I think it will continue to evolve depending on the generation and who you ask.
Before we get out of here, we've done a lot of education today. We've done a lot of explanation today. I want to ask you to leave us with a note of inspiration. For the folk that are in here, when they go back out into the world, when they go back out into their jobs, go back out into their careers, back to their families, back to the things that are their daily challenges, and looking at the world that is to come and that they're trying to deal with, what piece of advice or encouragement do you want everybody out here to walk out of here with that will give them hope for what's next?
Yeah, so I have to give a quick shout out to, I do a podcast. It's called Life and Leadership Unplugged. And we're going into season 2, and we always end with, my hope for you is. And for me to the guests, and the guests back to me. And so I do have a hope, but I think it's really steeped in the lessons learned for me that I would share. Just being someone who I've worked in quite a few places. I've been blessed with a very prosperous career through it all. My kids are amazing. They're not perfect, but they're amazing. And for me, with them, a success thing they always say for me, I love it. And they say, because I've moved around so much, and my oldest son says, Mom, home is wherever you are. And I was like, man, I nailed that. So that's good, so we're good. But a few things that I share with people, I always say, especially in times like this, always take the high road, because it never runs out. Always take the high road, because it never, ever runs out. When you think you need to fall back to get down to a level, just stay up on the high road. It will never run out. Also, I said this before, never, ever compromise your integrity. In order to do that, you have to know what you stand for, and know what your values are, and know what your family stands for, and the things that you want to do. And then the last thing I will say, I have a couple more, but I would say, and my boss, chairman, he's chairman of our board of the foundation, he told me this once. We were preparing for something, and I called him. I was like, well, I really, it'd be better if you gave this presentation. He was like, no. He said, never give your power away, not even to me. And so I would say, when you get into situations, think about where the power stands and what your power is, and never give it away. And so in these times, those are a few things that I would just leave with you that have stayed with me in this ebb and flow of my life, and as it's continuing, and hopefully they can help you as well.
Amen. Help me thank Kelly Cornish for joining us today.